Our page doesn't really do anything unless we add some buttons to it. Graphically speaking, a button is pretty much any design element that's not a page or a pop-up. Buttons can be, as the name implies, a simulated button that the user pushes to execute some type of command, like making a Blu-ray player eject the disc. They can be a bar graph that shows the current audio zone volume, lighting level, or outside temperature. They can also be static, non-interactive elements, like a company logo or a shadow effect. Since buttons cover such a broad range of uses, we'll be coming back to buttons several times throughout this training course. Back on our main page, we'll add a generic button by clicking on Edit in the menu bar and selecting the Button Draw tool. The mouse cursor changes to a pencil with crosshairs whenever you hover over an area where a button can be drawn. Draw a button by clicking and dragging on the page until the box is approximately the size you want. When you let go of the mouse button, there should now be a colored rectangle with small red squares surrounding it. That's our button. You can click anywhere on the button and drag it around the page, or click and drag on one of the little red squares to change its shape and size. In the Properties window, you'll see a few more options than we did on the pages we made. In the General tab, you can select the type of button you want it to be. Click on the drop-down to see the different types of buttons there are. Let's just focus on the most common types for now. General buttons are the most used type. They have two states, on or off, and these states are typically used for some type of feedback, like showing the on state to make the button light up whenever a particular source is selected, and the off state when the source is not selected. Multi-state general buttons have up to 256 states and are generally used for animations or giving several different types of feedback information, like stop, caution, and go. Bar graph represents a range of values and use the on and off state parameters to fill the button according to its current level value. Multi-state bar graphs can also have up to 256 states and are generally used for animation as well, such as a graphical representation of a fader on a mixing console. We'll stick with general for now. You can also give your button a name here. Don't forget to lock it unless you want this name to be overwritten if you change the button text later. The size and location of the button can be fine-tuned by directly entering values here. I'll make my button 173 pixels wide and 93 pixels high. The touch style refers to how you want the button to respond to touch. Active touch means that only the active pixels of the button will count as a touch. If I add a bitmap to this button, or use a rounded border type, the transparent part of the button will not count as a touch if you press there. Bounding box means that, regardless of what part of the button has active pixels, everything within the rectangular outline of the button counts as a touch if you press there. Pass-through disables touch on this button entirely. This would be used for buttons that are non-interactive graphical elements. I'll keep the button set to active touch. Border style allows you to apply one of several predefined border types. It isn't necessarily required to have images created for every button on your touch panel. A lot of times, a simple button with a border is all you need. I'm going to add a border to my button. How about circle 45? That will give the button rounded corners with a 45 pixel radius. You'll see that the border color is different than the fill color. We'll change that later. If I disable or hide a button, I can keep them in my layout as a placeholder, but at runtime the functionality of that button will be disabled, or the button will be hidden altogether. The Button Programming tab defines how the button itself interacts with the code running on the Netlinks master. There are three types of addresses used for buttons: address, channel, and level. We're going to be covering this Programming tab in much greater detail in a future tutorial. Moving to the States tab, we can see there's a lot going on here. Don't worry, it's pretty much the same stuff, just separated for the different button states. Since this is a general button, there are two states, off and on. We can set the border color, fill color, text, and bitmap separately for each state. If there's anything we want to be the same for both states, just edit those parameters in the All States section so you don't have to make changes in more than one place. The current button colors don't go with my background image very well, so I'm going to change them. In the All States tab, I'll set my border color to something neutral, but makes the button stand out from the background. Click on the square with the 3 dots on it to open up the Colors dialog box. You can enter all of the color information manually if you like, but I'm going to select Color Name in the Choose Color By dropdown. Scroll down to the grays, and pick Gray 5. You can do the same thing for the fill color too, but you'll probably want different colors for the on and off states of the button. Under the off state, click on the Fill Color box. Select Color Name in the dropdown, and pick a color that goes with the background image on your page. When you pick a color for your on state, remember that it is intended to attract your attention, so we'd typically use a brighter color. To see the different button states in your layout, you can choose the state you want to see by clicking on Button in the menu bar and selecting Choose a Display State. There's a handy keyboard shortcut for that as well. F11 shows the on state, and Shift F11 will show the off. If you're not sure what state you're looking at, you can always enable the Function and State Overlay by selecting View in the menu bar and clicking on Display Function and State Overlay. The current state is shown here in the top right corner. This will also show the address, channel, and level codes. This button's looking pretty good, but what is it for? We need to add some text. I want the text to be the same for both the on and off states, so I'll edit that under All States. Choose the font for the text in the drop-down here. I like Helvetica, so I'll pick that. Enter a font size here, and edit the text by clicking on the box. I'll call my button System Power. Click OK when you're done. So now that we have general buttons down, in the next tutorial, we'll make a simple bar graph.